Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, I want to thank you and Ranking Member Manchin for holding this hearing on important implementations affecting the Land and Water Conservation Fund. In my view, the big implementation issue with this critical program is inadequate funding. You and I, Madam Chair, have talked about this since the days when I was chair of the committee, and we worked on it, and the issue is important now as it was then. I do want to get into an issue that, to my knowledge, Madam Chair, has not been discussed in this committee, but I think it is going to have to be discussed because it reflects a development that was reported on in the news just in the last couple of days. In the last couple of days, it came to light that millions of acres in the West are now being bought up by just a few private landowners. And this has introduced a whole host of new issues. Apparently, according to these new news reports, some of these private landowners essentially are asking people about their political views before allowing local folks to cross onto public lands. Now, if this is the case, and if it is widespread, and again, this is a brand new news report, and all of us know that it ought to be taken in that context, this ought to be concerning to all Americans in this committee. Publicly owned lands are everybody's lands, and this committee has always had the responsibility of doing oversight to making sure that public lands meant just that public lands ensured equal access. So I thought, Mr. O'Mara, apropos of this, what do you know about this development, if anything? And what are your thoughts about the prospect of the possibility of new, very large private landowners in effect developing something which I don't know of in the law as a former chair of the committee, basically saying you can have a political test that determines whether somebody gets access to public lands. So tell me what, if anything, you know about this development, how serious it is, and maybe it's not serious, and what you think about the concept of having almost a political litmus test for getting access to public lands.
Yeah. I mean, so thank you for the question. Across the West, we are seeing kind of these large, very wealthy individuals buying up more and more tracts. And it's actually a little more insidious than you even mentioned, in that you're seeing folks actually try to shut down existing public access, public roads, things like that, that are public assets, that they're basically either just closing on their own with like kind of gates and the like, or trying to go to county commissions to get them to condemn roads in some cases, trying to make it all private. There's 9.5 million acres that are currently inaccessible, that are public lands, federal public lands, that the public just cannot get to right now. That number is actually going to get bigger if some of these acquisitions occur, some of these kind of large landowners buy more land and then try to shut down additional access. And frankly, it's changing the very nature of kind of conservation in some communities. Like in Idaho, for example, lands that have been accessible for a long time, even though they're privately held, there's just kind of a common understanding that if folks were going to hunt responsibly or fish responsibly, that would be allowed. And you are seeing these. I haven't seen so much on the political tests, but I am seeing folks shut down land that's been accessible for generations. And you think about like in Oregon, where like the John Day River, like the little acquisition that you led, a few years ago, made that waterway accessible at scale. If we lose those opportunities and we don't have a tool to combat that, like full funding of LWCF, we're going to see more and more access be lost over in the years ahead.
I'd like to, and I don't have much more time, I'd like to hold the record open for you to outline any additional views you may have on this. I know it's striking you as something that you weren't prepared to be asked about this morning. I would only ask, Madam Chair, if we could discuss this in the days ahead, because I was struck by this news just a couple of days ago. The article was very detailed. It was, of course, just a news report. But if even a portion of what was described there is accurate, particularly with respect to access of public lands. That's something we've always gotten into, and under your leadership and the ranking minority members, I'd very much like to see us get into it.
I appreciate that, Senator Wyden. I, too, read the article with great interest and probably similar concern. So I think that is a subject that is important for this committee's discussion. But I think also one of the points that Mr. O'Mara raised, in that you do have significant lands that are being bought up by very wealthy individuals that, again, are cutting off what we would assume to be historic access to hunting and fishing. And it is a reality that the lands that we seek to enjoy are becoming more and more limited, whether it is through what was described in the New York Times article or the very significant areas of land that we drive by and say, well, I remember being able to go fish on that, but now it's owned by X millionaire.
Madam Chair, my time is up. I very much share your view as it relates to hunting and fishing and these other uses. I'm going to be heading home to rural Oregon this weekend. I'm sure I'm going to hear about that. So I thank you for your thoughtful response and look forward to having the chance to talk about it.
Thank you.